If he wants it, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis appears to have a chance at running for the White House in 2024. Recent polling shows in a theoretical Trump-less primary, DeSantis leads former Vice President Mike Pence by 7 points, which is a shift from last month when Pence led DeSantis by 2 points. Again, all theoretical. Governor DeSantis has so far denied he is running in 2024, saying he's focused on his re-election next year. And some revelations about the midterms. In the spring, you'll remember, Florida passed an elections bill limiting mail-in voting. To pass it, state Republicans preached it was necessary to prevent fraud, insisting it was not political, which were, of course, all lies, according to internal exchanges obtained by Politico. In them, Florida Republicans made clear they believed mail-in ballots would be devastating for their party in 2022. With me now, former Florida Congressman Debbie McGarcelle-Powell, Fernando Mondi. He is the host of the Strange Days podcast and an MSNBC political analyst. Jonathan Jays Green, they are a DACA recipient and the vice president of programs from the Marguerite Casey Foundation. And Sarah Audello, she is the executive director for the Alliance for Youth Action. It is great to see you all. Congresswoman, I'm going to start with you because I have this Pelosi Dear Colleague letter in my hand. So we know tomorrow they're going to begin debate on the bipartisan infrastructure framework. They're going to vote on it Thursday. What I want you to do for me, Debbie, is just pull back the curtain, because you have been in these rooms where these negotiations happen. You know what this looks like. And when we hear that Speaker Pelosi is going to stand before the caucus and make one final plea, I think everyone thinks that she's going to give some speech like out of, American president, and all of a sudden everyone's going to be like, oh, I see the light, I changed my mind. That's not actually how this works, right? There's backroom negotiating where people are trying to figure out what can actually go into this. So your sense, reading the tea leaves, they're going to debate tomorrow, they're going to vote Thursday. What does that mean?
Yeah. Hi, Alicia, and hi, everyone. Look, the speaker knows very well what she's doing, and I think that she needs a few days to make sure that she hears from those concerned Democrats, whether they're the more moderate or the more progressive Democrats in the caucus, on the bill. She's going to make sure that she has the votes once the bill is on the floor. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that she will have those votes. But I think right now what's happening is there are a lot of conversations behind the scenes. There are a lot of members who are in difficult districts that need to make sure that what's included in the bill is going to benefit the constituents that they're representing. That's where it boils down to. And the master in the speaker is that she makes sure that the people that the Democrats are representing are going to benefit from this bill. And she wants to also ensure that it's a bipartisan bill. She's probably also having conversations with some of the Republicans in the caucus to ensure that some of their requests are also being met. The speaker from the very beginning has made it clear that she puts bipartisan bills on the floor. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that there's a radicalization from Republican members of Congress who are not voting to support the best interests of their constituents. I've seen it here in South Florida, Alicia. Our Congress members here in the South Florida delegation have been voting against the people that needed the votes, voting against climate change dollars that would benefit as we see our sea level rising. Voting against infrastructure dollars where we know that our infrastructure is crumbling here in South Florida. So a lot of negotiation, but I have no doubt in my mind she will have the votes and the bill will pass.
Nothing like talking to someone who has actually been in those rooms. Fernand, now let's talk about what is happening in your state, in Florida, and this new reporting, which I'm going to guess didn't surprise you, that Republicans pushed this legislation because they knew that they were up against a problem where they couldn't win the right way. Where does that leave Florida voters?
Well, Alicia, I think it leaves Florida voters in the same where it leaves voters all across the 50 states. I wish this was a problem that was just contained to the borders of the Sunshine State, where we see a Republican Party that runs the state completely untethered from American democracy, doing everything in its power to, yes, rig the electoral system and make democracy and elections harder to participate in. But this is something we continue to see all across the country. The big lie after the 2020 election has metastasized. It's grown stronger. And that is why I am actually hopeful that if and when, and hopefully the Democrats can get this infrastructure bill that you reported passed as early as this week, they can move on to the existential fundamental priority for this country, which is to try and save the democracy from a Republican Party that is untethered from the tenets of democracy and that is openly saying, without any consequences or seeming accountability, that they are going to do everything impossible to upend our democratic system and our democratic elections and make it impossible for Democrats to win any elections going forward.
So, Sarah, I take Fernand's point. I agree with it that this is not just about Florida and it is not just about Texas. We are watching this happen all over the country. How then do we fight back?
You know, Alicia, across the Alliance for Youth Action Network, young people have been leading on voting rights in almost every single state. Right now, and I'm so glad you're raising, this is not just in Florida, this is not just in Texas. Right now, we have an incredible organization in Kansas called Loud Light. They were created to register young people to vote. Sadly, our government should be the ones who are registering people, who are welcoming them into our democracy, but when they don't, young people do. Loud Light had to suspend all of their voter registration activities literally on the 50th anniversary of the 26th Amendment, the 50th anniversary of 18-year-olds getting the right to vote, because a terrible law passed in Kansas that basically says if anyone could mistake you for being an elections official, you would get a fine, you would get a steep penalty, and you'll be thrown in jail. Like, this is ridiculous in 2021 in the United States. And so young people are here doing everything they can to fight back. And we're whether it's trying to get rid of the filibuster, whether it's trying to pass the For the People Act, or throw down in state houses and legislators across the country, young people have been leading on this fight, and that's not going to stop.
Jonathan, what strikes me is that there is this macro conversation about our democracy and what our democracy looks like and what is at stake. And part of what is at stake is the way that this all then translates to voting when it comes to what the Senate is doing, what the House is doing, the president's domestic agenda. Tell me what you believe is at stake when we talk about what's happening in Florida, when we talk about what's happening in Texas.
Thank you so much for that. As I listen to all of the attacks that are happening on our democracy across the state, I am disgusted in the fact that there are people who are spending resources, time, and energy to defend the very principle that this country was allegedly founded on, our democracy. And when we think about, we at the Margaret King Foundation, when we think about what it looks like to protect democracy, we believe that racial justice, the principles of racial justice, are a prerequisite to a functioning democracy. So it's not a coincidence that all of these efforts impact poor people, Black folks, Latinx folks, communities of color, vulnerable communities across the country. So what I hear, what I feel when we're talking about all of these attacks, I'm just so disappointed and really inspired by the leadership of those on the front lines. Groups like the Arizona Center for Empowerment, who are leading the fight on the ground. Groups like Georgia Stand Up, Florida Rising, there are a ton of organizations and organizers that, like Sarah said, because our government has failed, they have taken it upon themselves to fight for full and true democracy.
So, Debbie, all of this, of course, with an eye towards 2022 and 2024, which brings us back to Ron DeSantis. And I am going to guess, much like at the top of the show, Secretary Castro, Vicki, were talking about how Greg Abbott's presidential ambitions are the worst kept secret in Texas, that your governor's presidential ambitions are the worst kept secret in Florida. Is that correct?
I don't know if it's the worst kept secret. I think everyone knows that his political ambitions are coming before the interests of Floridians when we need him the most, especially during this devastating COVID pandemic, the rise of the Delta virus here in the state of Florida. He's been out raising money. He's been traveling. He's gone to the border in Texas for photo ops. He's been in New Jersey. He's gone to Iowa. He's traveling, raising money for his presidential run. And it's been obvious to Floridians here in the state of Florida. But let me just say that the right to participate in our democracy is sacred and non-negotiable. And what the Republican legislature is doing here in the state of Florida and across America is an attack against the voters, an attack against our democracy. It's undemocratic, un-American, and unconstitutional. And I think that they are going to pay a price for trying to pass bills that are attacking the rights of those who are most vulnerable. People that are older with disabilities, students, communities of color. So they're doing it so that they can set the stage, like you said, for 22 and also 24. But I hope that America's paying attention to what is happening here in Florida. We cannot allow the governor to take that run for president in 2024. It would be devastating.
Debbie, Fernand, Jonathan, Sarah, thank you all. Next, a